Welcome, Jenetta Berry.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Such a special amount of years of association with you, Louise. So this is a precious time together.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You used to be my go-to person, and now you're just my wonderful friend. So it's such an amazing journey we've been.
Oh dear, I've been demoted.
No, it's a promotion.
It's a promotion. Okay. Yeah.
Well, so Jenetta, you're going to tell us your story. You've got a long story. You've got lots of stories. So you're going to surprise us with which story you are going to tell us, right?
Okay. Well, I guess the biggest life test story, which had another story attached to it, which was just as difficult, was the day that I had an enormous argument with my 16-year-old daughter, Jen. And I was applying safe housekeeping rules because she was just breaking them left, right, and center. And she left in an absolute rage to go and pack and leave home. And after a while, I sensed something wasn't right, and I went to look for her. And I found her hanging in her shower with a broken neck. And it was absolutely devastating for me, even though it was her fourth attempt to commit suicide. We'd been walking a walk for some time with Jen, in fact, since she was 14. Still, you know, the shock and the trauma of finding your child hanging dead like that has a lasting effect. And I call it having gone right down to ground zero. I tried to pick up the pieces and I found that deep, dark, black, emotional hole that I was imprisoned in, it felt like a lifetime prison sentence. It was just so overwhelming. And in the time that went on, I actually couldn't see how I could actually carry on. And I planned my suicide 3 times, going, there's no point. Everything, I lost everything really. And prophetically, 9 months after Jen died, so it's kind of like it took 9 months to form her, and then 9 months after losing her, I came across the basics after research and study, because I had to make a choice. Do I go on like this, or do I find ways to get out? So I decided to research and study, and I came across the basics of what I now work with, but I had to work it through myself. I had to walk the walk and talk the talk. And it wasn't easy, because I always say to people, I didn't have a Jenetta to help me through with it. It was a really, really tough journey. And I knew that once I got out the other side, although the process of losing a loved one like that is a lifetime thing, it isn't going away. But once I got out of that black hole and was able to live a new normal life, I knew that this was about being able to do this work with people all around the world. And I set up internationally online. I've been working over 12 years now with people from day-to-day challenges through to anxiety and depression, right through to PTSD. I was flown into a terrorist attack scenario and helped the victims of that attack. And now this year, very close to my heart, we're busy refocusing in alignment with a day we have in October called Jenny's Day. She died on World Mental Health Day. How incredible is that? So we're refocusing so that I work with all this lockdown. The tension between parents of teens and teens has just skyrocketed. So this year I'm especially focusing on working with parents of teens and those teens as we gear up towards Jenny's Day. And that's the legacy that this has created and that I'm looking to hand on to the next generation. So that's it in a nutshell, and why we're here today.
Yes, okay, but I don't want the nutshell. I want a bit more. Because I know the whole story. So that's not all there is to this, of course. Yeah. I want you to tell us a bit more about the day you crossed the road. I mean, you said
the crossing over day. Yeah, I actually wrote a piece, and that piece went into a theatrical production that opens the second act of the show on depression, suicide, and solutions, because it was such a profound moment. I was in that deep, dark black hole and really walking mindlessly in the street, knowing that I needed to cross the road to do something on the other side of the road. And a big part of me didn't even want to be there or to cross or to make the decision to cross or do anything really, but I was just mindlessly going on. And I got to the edge of the pavement and realized I needed to step off it. And I truly just wove through the traffic. How nothing ever hit me, I don't know. And as I got to the middle of the road, I began to go, you're thinking you don't have choice. You think this is where you're stuck for the rest of your life, but you do have choice. And as I was still, because my mind was now on choices, I still wasn't watching traffic. And I carried on to the other side of the road and reached the pavement. I realized that I had reached a profound moment, which was that I have no choice but to have choice. That this wasn't an option, that I no longer wanted to live a life on hell. And as I stepped amazingly, miraculously, safely onto the pavement on the other side of the street, I knew that I had crossed over. And it's a marvelous analogy because, of course, crossing over, not dying and not crossing over, but I had crossed over and had crossed over into that place of being empowered once again, even though I knew that it was going to be frickin' difficult, but that I had made a choice and that I would move on. So okay, that's the crossing over.
So that day is the day when you decided not to kill yourself, even if you accidentally ended in front of a car. It's the day you decided to find meaning in Jenny's death. And it's the day you decided to live again.
Yeah, it's the day I decided that the only way I could move forward was to find ways to get out of that hole, out of my prison. That was the day, but I had no idea how that was going to happen because I was still feeling aimless and focusless and lost. And obviously I still felt I was in prison. So, but something turned in me as I prophetically crossed that road and went, I will find ways, but I have no idea how I'll do this. No idea.
And I remember you said to me, you couldn't stay where you were. You knew you couldn't stay where you were. If you were going to get over, then you would have to do it differently.
Yeah, I remember lying in bed going, can you imagine feeling like this? It's just so overwhelming and overwhelmingly painful for the rest of my life. And I went, no, that's why I'm wanting to leave the planet. And I don't really want to leave the planet. So that's not the issue. I just don't want to be like this for the rest of my life. And it was interesting because I've been part of a lot of closed and sometimes very private Facebook groups with bereaved mothers and bereaved parents. And it absolutely, I was gobsmacked at how many parents were sitting in those groups who had lost their children 20, 30 years ago, still running the same old story and the same old pattern, and that the rest of the world doesn't understand them and that they feel isolated and alone and judged. And if they ever talk about their child, then they get judged, so they can only feel safe in that room and they'll never get over it. And running the story that no parent should bury their child, so that made them defined. And I remember going, I'm not doing that. I'm really not going to do that. And I actually withdrew myself from all those groups because they did not want to get out of there. It had become a closed society that defined them and kept them, in my opinion, kept them bound in their grief.
Yeah, I see the same in some of my adult child groups where they are so intent on blaming the narcissist in their life that they are not focusing on their own power to change something. Okay, I want to ask you something else. This is what happens if a friend interviews you. Okay, so I had this habit of going to you with my problems because you were for me like the wisest person that I knew. You really were. And I used to ask you all kind of things, and now Jenny has died. And you one day said to me, you have to go and find another way to solve your problems. I don't have place for your problems in my life right now. I am honoring my grief. And you explained to me, you said to me, if you need to stay in bed, you stay in bed. And if you need to go and scream on top of a mountain, that's what you do. But you are honoring your grief and you don't have time for my problems. Now, a lot of people will never say that to you. You know, in that situation, somebody comes to you for help. And I have so much respect for the fact that you actually said that to me that day. It taught me something about self-care, but also I learned from you about honoring your grief. And if I didn't do that, and see, I'm going to cry. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't have been able to grieve for my mother. I had no way of knowing how to grieve before that. So I want you to just explain a little bit more about that concept of honoring your grief, because people are scared of grieving.
Yeah, they're scared of pain. We're wired to want to feel pleasure, to feel safe. That is how we're wired. So honoring your grief can be a scary place. But if you don't honor it, it means you're judging it. And if you're judging it, your pain volume dials are going to go up even higher. So being able, I call it allowing and wallowing. And funnily enough, it's another, well, not funnily enough, understandably enough, it's another one of the production numbers in that theatrical production. And I call it allowing and wallowing, where it's really important to allow what isn't working to be expressed and felt in a place where you go, this is as important a part of my grief as anything else. So it's not like saying, okay, I'm indulging in it because poor me. It's allowing it because you understand, embrace it, and honor it, that as much as getting through the grief, feeling and expressing the grief is part of the process of grieving. And I always say it gets to a point where you click over from allowing what you're feeling. And this applies to anything, not just grief. Anytime you're dealing with a challenge, my partner in my life now, I'll have a challenge and I'll tell him and he'll start trying to fix me. And I'll go, no, you have to allow me to say these things safely and express myself. And I'll know when I've clicked over into, oh, poor me. I'm feeling so put upon or so disempowered, or you can feel that moment where you go, I'm looking for pity from myself and from others and situations. And you know, okay, the allowing part has served itself. Now there's ways to step more into your power because that's been honored. That's the honoring your grief or your loss or whatever it is.
Okay, so, you know, I used to edit out crying. It was not allowed because I was so scared. And the funniest thing that happened is that when I started crying for my mother, I cried uncontrollably for about 2 hours, 3 hours in shopping centers and all over. When I was eventually sitting in the car, still crying nonstop, and I realized I am actually now crying for every single thing that I have edited out of my life before. I healed in that moment. I grieved for everything. I grieved for my father, for cats that I've lost, for huge disappointments. I grieved and I grieved and I grieved. It didn't take that long. It was probably 2-3 hours of crying. But if I can just imagine how scared I was, that if I started crying, I would melt. Those tears would wash me away because the dam wall will break and there'll be nothing left of me. It's like it was genuinely the idea I had. So yeah, I have to thank you because you definitely have shown me with your example of doing it properly, that it is the way in which you can eventually get to a place where you can get over the hardest things if you choose.
Absolutely. And you're so welcome, my darling friend. You're really so welcome. And you know, one of the things with crying that people don't realize is it's more than just that. I mean, that is huge. I'm not marginalizing what you've just said because it's absolutely spot on and it's enormous. But there's more to it than that. We urinate, and when we do, we release toxins. When we sweat, we release toxins. And when we cry, we release toxins that cannot be released in any other way from our bodies. So if you don't cry, those toxins are trapped in your body. And when you realize that crying is as natural a thing as sweating and weeing, then it's like, oh gosh, you are an important part of my life. And again, the judgment of crying is balanced out because so much of our society says it shows a weakness. Well, it can show a weakness. It shows a weakness in some form. It shows a strength as well, equally at the same time. And when you can embrace both and acknowledge how precious and important crying is, that's part of allowing your grief.
I think it's me on my strongest because I am not concerned about whether anybody is judging me. I mean, I cried a few minutes ago here in front of an international audience. Tough luck. It's not me being weak. It's me allowing my feelings. There's a very big difference between the two.
Well, again, it's not for currying pity. It's because it's a true expression from who you truly are. And then that actually shows, that vulnerability shows your genuine strength.
Yeah.
Genuine strength. And then that's when it assists others because they sit there going, wow, that's powerful crying. Yeah. That's building crying. That's growth. That's amazing. And the more and more people that can embrace that as we move forward during these really different times, the more and more people will heal or balance. I don't even know if they're broken and need healing. They'll balance what's been more than extremely wobbly before.
Yeah, allow what's real. That's so important. Okay, so Jenetta, you were born extraordinary, but you were not born this wise always. So you were a motivational speaker before, right? Even before. Yeah. And you did very well in your corporate job. But then something happened. Yes.
Motivational sales and training, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then something happened that changed your entire life. And so I'm talking about your cancer. And so do you want to tell us a little bit more about your journey and the insights that you got to?
Oh, my word, there are just so many. Okay, let's backtrack to cancer. I mean, I've been journeying a journey for a long time on the correlation between emotions and disease. Because when you're not at ease with yourself, it causes dis-ease within you. And so the fact that, I mean, let's go to a child in school and they're having a bad time at school for whatever reason, and suddenly that little person's going, oh, I got a tummy ache. That's the physical indication that the emotions are not at ease, and a form of dis-ease is showing itself. So the more you bury whatever it is that's bothering you and judge it as being something you shouldn't be feeling, the more ill at ease you become, and the more the dis-ease manifests inside you. So when you can understand that, your body becomes your messenger. So whatever part of your body is showing dis-ease is saying to you, that's where you've buried whatever that angst was. And if you can take the emotions and bring them into open-hearted acceptance and appreciation, the dis-ease will disintegrate. And then actually that particular illness balances out. And I've proved it time and time again. And I was only at the early stages of studying that when I realized that I was undergoing a huge amount of stress around me. My husband had been fired and retrenched from jobs. We were in a country where schooling for children was unbelievably expensive, beyond most countries' costs. So I was running 5 jobs, trying to keep my husband buoyant because he was so depressed. Children, I already had Jenny talking about voices in her head, my daughter that died. So I was juggling all that and choreographing a ballet, teaching ballet, marketing for safari companies. We were in Kenya at the time. And I remember lying in bed one night and going, I can't keep this up. I'm trying to be super mum, super wife, super daughter, super sister, super friend, super woman in my work, and I can't do this anymore. But a big story in me was, if I stopped doing that, I'd be judged. You know, what sort of mother goes, I can't do mother anymore. So what is it that I have to do to be able to step off this whole unbelievable little dance I'm dancing and still be endorsed as loved and lovable? And I laid there and went, the only way would be to get really ill, and then everybody will rally around me. And I remember lying there going, yeah. And a few nights later, I was choreographing the Mikado, and I was on the stage. I had Neil, he was then 13 years old, in the chorus behind me. I mean, this poor child had such a shock because I was doing high kicks, and suddenly I had problems before, but suddenly I found myself bleeding all down my legs, all over the stage. I couldn't stop the bleeding, in incredible pain, and trying to drive home in the dark and get home. I got in the bath water turned blood red. Remember my husband saying, what the heck is this? No, it's just a heavy period. And he went, no, that's not a heavy period. Well, to cut a long story short, I was airlifted out of Kenya down to South Africa, and they opened me up, and they found that I had stage 1 cancer. So it was very new cancer. They said it's only just started, but it's grade 3. So it's like a bushfire. So it was spreading rapidly by the second. And I remember lying there going, it's only 10 days ago I said, okay, I need to get ill. And here it was. I was lying there going, oh my word. And I nearly died 3 times during that time of being, because instead of coming straight home after a normal hysterectomy, and I had to go out of the country, by the way, because in those days there wasn't the blood banks or the expertise in Nairobi. Now there's everything there, but I had to go out, and then I suddenly found that I had to stay an extra 3-4 months for cancer treatment because it was not looking so great. And I just realized just how powerful our thoughts and emotions are connected to our body. And I thought, well, if I can manifest that in days, I can do the other side, with the result that I hardly ever get ill. If I think back, I last had flu 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And if I do, that there is a little bit of repercussion on radiation treatment on my intestines now. And I have to have a special key for the toilets internationally to get to a toilet really, really fast. And that kicked in about 5 years ago. And it's a post-radiation side effect 15, 20 years after having had radiation. I can't get to a loo fast enough sometimes. But even then, I think it's still there because it keeps me humble. Otherwise, I can easily sit back and go, okay, everybody, all of you are ill. Just get your minds right and your emotions right and you'll be fine. That's the one side that I haven't managed to quite balance. It's got better of late. And I know it's directly associated to sexual abuse I had at 7, because there it is, it's in that area. I'm no longer got a uterus, but that cancer in the uterus is correlated to that. And it's still coming up in waves because some really interesting things are happening, dynamics within the family right now, which are just too awful, connected to all of that. So I've realized that it's kept me humble, but there's still a lot of work to be done there.
Wow. Yeah, I'm speechless.
It's quite a thing.
Yeah.
It is quite a thing. So yeah, I've just found that every time something has come up and challenged me, I've now been able to look and research and study and apply, because unless I do that work, how am I possibly going to help anybody else? I mean, like you've found on your journey of helping others.
Yeah,
You've
got to help yourself. Yeah. And I love what you say about being humble, because it is, when you start being able to help a lot of people, you have to make sure that you bring yourself down a little bit. And if there's something that keeps you humble, then it's excellent. I had a very recent experience with what I've learned from you about our language and our belief systems and how it is that we are sick. Because here, it's like literally here where I'm sitting now used to be my spare bedroom. And one night when I had a migraine, you cornered me right here. And you kept me upright in the middle of the night for 2-3 hours until I figured out why I needed migraines in my life. And like somewhere in between, I wanted to kill you and I never wanted to see you again. But you just stuck at it. And because I know you, I let you, but I really wanted to kill you. And I did get it in the end, which was hugely important. And it was the only time I ever got support. And I didn't do it on purpose, because nobody ever does it on purpose. It's never on purpose. People are always so fast to say I don't do it on purpose. But really, nobody does it on purpose. And nobody will on purpose harm themselves that much.
It'll go even further, just to interrupt you, because that will have been some sort of association where when you were a child, that was that instant that happened to you and you went, okay, fine. You might have said, oh, I've got a headache, and suddenly there was a running around and a caring, and you went, oh, support.
Yeah, or it might have been my mother's example, because my mother had migraines. And it was also, and she got support. Yeah, and she also got support when she had migraines. So, it's been repeated, and she also wasn't supported. So it's hard to make peace with it, but it really was true, because that thing that I didn't have, that support, was traumatic for me. And so now, a few months ago, when I was lying on my back here with a slip disc, I realized how much I was enjoying it. That's a cat's paw. All right. So I actually enjoyed it so much, because this time I wasn't giving instructions. It's COVID times. I didn't have staff. So it was just me and my husband in the house, and he was doing everything that I used to do, even all the instructions that I used to say, oh, Michelle this, Michelle that. No, he was doing everything, and he was getting so tired, he would crawl in the bed at night, and I was like, yes, now you know what it feels like to be me. I was really, I was a bit evil. So, but I was enjoying it so much. And I think, I enjoyed it a little bit too much because the pain was real, but the chiropractor couldn't find anything wrong with me. But the pain was real. I couldn't get out of that bed. And the pain was real. But eventually, I figured this one out. Oh, bloody hell, Louise. Instead of you just having this conversation with your husband, you're feeling bad because you're not doing your womanly job. And the only way that, instead of saying to him that, you don't really believe in that nonsense, it's an equal society, and thank you very much, you are hiding behind the pain. And so I had the conversation with him, and then the pain went. So it's so real.
Wow.
See how,
and it's so wonderful when one can do that, because most people can't.
But also, Jenetta, that's why some of us are coaches. But, Jenetta, and some of us are very, very willing to do the self-investigating, because the more willing you are to do the self-investigating, the more you're willing to look at your own messiness and your own internal language. And even if you don't like what you find, the more willing you are to really address it and use it. Not label it as bad, but just use it and fix whatever you now know you can fix it.
Absolutely.
So the more you are going to heal in, the more you can help other people.
Yeah. I mean, to give you an example, here I am all these years on with this knowledge and with this application. I've helped thousands of people online worldwide through the most amazingly difficult times, and I'm still helping them. And I can honestly say to you, these last 3 months have been so testing. I'm here in Oxford in England. We've been locked down for the best part of a year now. It'll be a year next week. And this last 3-4 months of lockdown has been the most trying. And in that time, have I had to look at, because it feels like you're under house arrest, all choices, your freedom's gone, your choice is gone. And I was watching childhood emotions surfacing regularly in me, overwhelmed, disempowered. What the heck is this all about? No energy, not wanting to focus on my work anymore, just unbelievably testing. So this isn't about saying that even though you do this work, it makes it easier to do it. It just means you've got the skills and tools to do it. Because this is the hardest thing this last 3 months, not so much this last year, but this last 3 months has been the hardest thing that I've had to work through since Jen died. And also, I also lost Catherine, my youngest. I didn't mention that earlier, but we were living in a country that allowed a 12-year-old to decide which parent to live with. And my marriage finally dissolved after Jen died. And she chose to go and live with her dad. She was spittingly mad with me. And I call that a living death because she and I missed out on her teenage years. I was never a mother for her. I was in another country. I moved back to Kenya most of the time. I couldn't operate my work in her area. And so I had to go back to where my work was. And it was very, very difficult. So those two losses I've managed, and, I've got through quite a lot of challenge in that time. It hasn't been easy, but these last 3 months, and interestingly enough, this Monday, things started to unwind again, and I could feel the flow was happening again. I could feel the depth of my insight has become so much deeper. And I know as we step into this year and this year's Jenny's Day, amazing things are going to happen because of these last 3 months.
Okay, so before you tell us about Jenny's day, I just want to point out one more thing that you said a little bit earlier, which was you had a conscious thought in your head that you needed to be sick. Sometimes we say it's not only a conscious thought, sometimes we say these things. I mean, we say so many things. I've had experience with that I've said stuff which it's like, how on earth did this happen? But I have said it. So it's really good for people to be aware that we have to be noticing what we are saying. And if we are saying negative things, even if we need to be sick to be taken care of, if we say negative things, then we have the power to let it happen.
Yeah, and it goes even further than that. There are sayings we say. You do my head in. I feel sick to the stomach. There are many, many sayings that we don't even realize that are attached to those emotions.
Yeah, rich people don't go to heaven, so let's just lose all our money.
Yeah, absolutely. There are many, many sayings like that.
And many of them are not our own. Many of them are just ones that we've taken over from our parents and we haven't questioned them. It's like, it's just how it is. I'm saying it.
Having said that, they are just words. They are just words. So there will have been more than just taking them over. There would have been an understanding of their meaning on certain levels, because if they're just words and you haven't attached emotion to them, they're just words. And this is a really classic one, and I'm going to use a profanity in this. I had friends when I was living in Cape Town at the age of 16. I went to University of Cape Town Ballet School from Kenya. and these German friends were learning English, and we were in somebody's garden, and there was a fig tree there. And I was saying, do you want a fig? And, and their eyes went as big as saucers, and they went, fig, in their colloquial language, that meant fuck. And it made me think, because to me, it's a fruit. To them, it's a profanity. And I use it a lot, especially when I'm with a lot of men who are charged up about attachment to words and actions. And often in my presentations with a room full of men, my every second or third word is fuck. And you can see them going, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then I say, it's just a word. It's the energy you attach to it and the judgment and the fear you attach to it that makes it meaningful, or doesn't. It just makes it a word, or it's not the word itself. So when you take on those sayings, there's a certain attachment that comes with it that you don't even know you've attached to it, because you felt the fear or the judgment that your parents attached to those words.
Okay, what about the other side? When you deliberately choose not to judge something as negative. You have alluded to it. So it's like, okay, I'm experiencing this emotion, and instead of saying this emotion is bad, it is just, this is the emotion I'm feeling at this stage. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, what you're saying is to take anything you have fear or judgment attached to and see where its equal opposite is. Is that what you're asking me?
No, not really. I'm saying that that instead of judging anything that is as negative, just to look at it and see it for what it is, because we attach such negativity, especially to things like feelings.
Yeah, that's easier said than done, because if your unconscious consciousness is attached to feeling that it's negative, your conscious consciousness can tell it till it's blue in the face. Here we go, blue in the face. There's one of them. Till it's blue, till you're blue in the face, because the unconscious consciousness doesn't believe it. The unconscious emotions don't. Well, they go, well, I'm still feeling. You can tell me from till the cows come home, but I still feel this. So it's a little bit more subtle. In fact, it's a lot more subtle and deeper, because it's about being able to access the unconscious consciousness part of your fears and judgments, and bring to light where there's equal gain in whatever you are judging. So let's give an example. And this is the basis of my work. I call it the yin and yang of science. Sorry, it is really cold here in England, and my heat is not behaving today. So excuse me whilst I do this.
I'm sucking oranges so that I don't cough. So we have to do what we have to do in order to survive.
At least I don't have a naked child climbing over my lap or something, which is what I had in an interview with somebody the other day, and they were going, "Oh, sorry." It's so sweet. I just laughed. Anyway, yeah. So if you've got a charge about something that's been done to you, or something that's happened to you, or about yourself, it's an interesting thing that the moment you judge something or you're fearful of something, then you're going to extreme thought and extreme emotion about it. You're likely to overthink, and sometimes you're more attached to being emotional about it, and sometimes you're more attached to being rational about it. So anything like that, you're going to be judging. Now, there are nearly 5,000 human traits in the dictionary, and approximately half are positive and half are negative. So if you're judging that part of yourself that's negative as being unacceptable or unloved or unlovable, you're going to attract people and circumstances into your life that reflect that which you judge on the journey of learning to love it. So if I'm saying this man is always so superior, then on an unconscious level, through some really amazing skills and techniques, you start asking yourself where you've been equally the same. But they're very specific questions that get you out of your head only, or your emotions only. So your emotions and head are going ding, 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 ding. And then suddenly you realize, oh, I've been just the same, either in the same form to the same degree, or in different ways to the same degree. And then you start seeing how their being like that works for you as much as it doesn't serve. So it's not saying it's okay they're like that, but then you start seeing, oh, this is where it's, and when I do it, this is where it serves me and others. And suddenly you can bring that charge you've been dancing with into centered balance. And I mean, there's a whole scientific diagram that shows how that works. And this is part of the studies that I did. So bringing the yin and yang, the extreme thoughts and emotions, which are nearly always contradicting each other, and reversing the polarities that they create, because that's what bipolar is. And we're all bipolar, by the way. It's just that some people are more manageable, because we're all bipolar because the whole world is made up of negative and positive charge. That's what bipolar is. But extreme bipolar is where we become disempowered, and being able to bring the extreme into manageability, then it opens hearts, it brings you into a place of wow. That's why I call my process the epiphany process, because it happens in a nanosecond, and the person's going, oh my word, it's like an electric shock, and they're going, oh, I never thought that. So that's where you discharge a charge about a word or an action or a person, a trait, really.
Yeah, I think I probably phrased it in a way which is more in the way that I do it, because it is essentially the same thing as making invisible to yourself what you didn't even know was driving your behaviors and your outlook and your actions, and just to do it in a way in which you embrace it, and you can actually do something with it instead of rejecting it. So it's the same. We've got different ways of doing it, but it is the same way of making visible that we are very unaware of. Okay, so tell us more about Jenny's Day.
Jenny's Day, yeah, such an interesting thing. Was a few years after Jenny died, in fact, not long after Jenny died, I realized through a dream actually that Jenny's birth date, which is 25th of September 1989, and her death date, which is the 10th of October 2005, when you add them up to single digits, came to nines and sevens. And, she died at 16, which if you add up is 7. 25 is 7, and September is 9, and 1989 adds up to 9. And so 799 adds up to 7 if you bring it to one figure, and 10th of October adds up to 9. And I can't tell you how often it happens with Jenny, that 7s and 9s happen, not just correlated to her death and birth. And then a couple of years after I realized that, I then realized that she'd also died on World Mental Health Day. And it was like, wow, it doesn't feel like it's its time now, but sometime that's going to have a meaningful impact. And last year I have a PR mentor. She's not my PR person, she's my mentor, with incredible clout with journalists here in UK. She sat down with me one day and said, you've got to make World Mental Health Day Jenny's Day. And so last year we had the first World Mental Health Day. We had many plans and tried different outlooks, and then it finally settled into Jenny's story, my story, and a little bit about the production and the book I'd written on Jenny after she died, and that's fine. But this year is different. Apart from the fact that, can you believe it, Louise, it's 16 years since Jenny died. She was 16 when she died. So it's another 7. The year is another 7, and the 7 and 9s have all kicked in again this year. It's like, whoa. And so we're looking to doing, I've just got a team of people together. We were talking about it today, doing some really meaningfully different things in this year's Jenny's Day. We're distributing because the symbol for Jenny's Day is a rainbow butterfly, and I know you'll know why. If you read Full Circle Rainbow, my book, the whole meaning is there. So it's a rainbow colored butterfly, and we're going to get it out there. We're doing fundraising now. I've just spoken to an amazingly big fundraiser here in UK. And we're getting that pin out like Poppy Day or Pink Ribbon internationally. It's going to go international so that people on World Mental Health Day will be wearing the rainbow butterfly for Jenny's Day.
Okay, and Jenny's Day is
10th of October.
Oh, yes, but it is about suicide awareness in teenagers, or what is it exactly that you want?
It's going to be a cross-section on depression, anxiety, depression, teenagers, parents. Basically, my journey with a bigger outlook. We're not sure if it's going to be able to happen yet, but we're looking to get a West End director to take 2 or 3 numbers from the show Insight that I mentioned earlier, and we get a cast in London. We either do it live or we pre-record. I really would like to see that. It's very dear to my heart that that'll be part of the day with discussion panels about those numbers from the show. It'll be, I call it the forgotten people. There's so much support and backup. Well, sometimes not, but there potentially is a lot of support and backup for the person that's feeling anxious and depressed and suicidally inclined, but not so much easily and readily understood for the carers, especially parents. I mean, as a parent, I found myself being attacked as being a really bad parent. And it was devastating. And then finding that whether I tried this, it didn't work with Jenny, and I tried the opposite, that didn't work. And then sometimes it did, and sometimes it didn't. And it felt like I was constantly failing as her carer. So there'll be part of that day for those who are attempting to help people who are being challenged in mental health. And there'll be, this is how we're looking at it. It could morph into something more. We've got 6 months to go still. But essentially, we're looking at this and seeing where it brings us. So it'll be a discussion panel on how an anxious and depressed person does and doesn't feel, and what limits them within themselves and how others limit them. So that's essentially what we're looking at now.
Okay, so you'll make sure that you send me a press release about it, and I'll send it out to the entire mailing list so that everybody can get it. And anybody who wants to connect with you can just go. All your information is in your bio. And
it is,
yeah, I think that you're not hard to get hold of. And
Louise, I just want to say kudos to you. You where you've come from and where you've come to today. I honor and salute what you've done on your journey and bringing us all, and you and I today, to this summit by way of example. Huge salute and shout out to you. I'm so immensely proud of you.
Thank you, Jenetta. And I think there's a lot of people who go, it's so easy for you, Louise, but they haven't seen me at my most victim-y, codependent, falling apart in the middle of helpless and hopeless. They haven't seen that. They haven't seen me when I was roadkill. So yes, thank you, my sweetheart. Lots of love to you. Okay, so we're going to sign off now. And yeah, lots of appreciation to you. Okay, so we're going to sign off now. Everybody's got your details. And guys, don't go away. There's another amazing interview straight after this one. And thank you so much.
Lots of love and bye to you all.
Good night.